Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of And Then There's That, a bi-weekly podcast of people, politics, and punditry in Howard County on the Hoco Mojo Network. I'm Paul Scowney, and I'm here at the mall in Columbia with my co-host, Dennis Lane. On today's show, Dennis and I will talk about horses run amok, local police heroes, and the real start of revitalization in Columbia. And joining us today is Maryland Attorney General Doug Gansler. Doug will surely tell us a little bit about the current legislative session, including information about pending legislation regarding gun control and the death penalty. And I'm sure we'll also hear about his plans for his run for governor. But first, a word from our sponsor. We'll be right back.
Check out what's happening around Columbia Association on the new CA Today blog or the new weekly video series, This Week at CA. Get information about current projects, upcoming programs, CA facilities, and more. Visit columbiaassociation.org/CA Today or check out our This Week at CA playlist on YouTube for the latest news. This message has been brought to you by Columbia Association.
All right, Dennis, what do you have to get us started today?
My favorite story of the week was, people sometimes forget that in Howard County we got the Laurel racetrack on the border of ourselves and Laurel. And this week there was a very funny story. One of the residents of Laurel Park, a resident named Bullet Catcher, a thoroughbred, Bullet Catcher got out and did a 1 mile sprint down.
Just took off down Route 1.
Just took off down Route 1. And I love the quote from the trainer that they finally did catch up with Bullet Catcher after about a mile. And the horse is okay now back at Laurel Park, but it said he was just feeling good. That's all. This is what horses love to do when they feel good. They run.
I'm pretty sure if I bred horses, I wouldn't hire that trainer because they're supposed to run in circles, not straight. On a more serious note, Howard Community College opened up their health sciences building this week. This building's been in the construction phase for the last couple of years. $50.7 million. I'll tell you, it's gotten expensive.
Yeah, $50.7 million. How many square feet is that? They didn't say. 120,000
square feet, something like that. And it's actually going to house health sciences, obviously, but cardiovascular technology, emergency medical services, exercise science, life fitness, all kinds of areas. And areas that really we need to be educating people in, that we need skilled workers in.
Of course, in Howard County, we're fortunate that our community college is located right next to our general hospital. So
it's right there. So and they've got a good partnership, which is great. Yeah. So yeah.
Trees are in the news this week. It was a good week for trees and a bad week for trees. We had a state trooper in Howard County ran into a tree on Route 32 earlier in the week, and then last night, maybe Wednesday night, a young man from Glenelg ran into a tree out by the high school. Now I love this. Young man driving his SUV, 2:30 in the morning, an SUV, a Cadillac Escalade. Is that only in Howard County that a kid
only in Howard County
has a Cadillac Escalade? So
the privilege, the western part of the county, and I can say so.
Kind of rough on the trees out there in western Howard County, but the good news for the trees, and this will be announced later today, the Columbia Association is about to unveil later this afternoon a new plan for the Symphony Woods Park in downtown, and this has been being worked on for a while. They're calling it the Inner Arbor Plan, and it's going to create not just a park for Columbia, but a regional park. And it's a pretty exciting plan. I was privy to a press preview yesterday, and I can just tell you that it's a wow. They're really taking it to the next level, and even to that point where, rather than get into a lot of detail here, the gentleman who designed it, Michael McCall, with a company called Strategic Leisure, a Columbia company, has agreed to come on our podcast later and explain it all to us. So we're going to have him on March.
And the environmentalists are going to be thrilled because they're not taking down a lot of trees.
Yeah,
and in fact, they may even replace a couple that got hit by the kid from Glenelg and the trooper this week.
It's a good week for trees.
Well, another story from the files of Only in Howard County. So, it really takes very little in the way of crime to make the news in Howard County. And the latest is the string of thefts from residential mailboxes.
Yeah.
And police said these thieves are targeting mailboxes with the little red flags up, and they're removing envelopes that contain checks. They're crossing them out, whiting them out, doing whatever, and they're cashing the checks.
There wouldn't be news in Baltimore City.
Are you kidding? This is like another day,
Would that be news in Montgomery County?
Yeah. Montgomery County is sort of a morph between the Howard County and Baltimore City.
It is. It's got the same kind of...
But, and I won't go through them all, but I had to chuckle about the advice that the United States Postal Service came out with and said, if you're going to mail stuff, you really should drop it into a blue box that has a slot so, nobody can get to it. Well, what's the point of having the little red flag on my mailbox if I can't put stuff in mail out. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway.
Why have the red flag if you can't do that?
Only in Howard County.
Well, I'd like to finish on, before we get into our guest, finish with a great story this week. We had a real hero in Howard County, Corporal Craig Ream on the Howard County Police Force. Came upon an accident. I'm trying to think where it was. It was at 3 a.m. It came out of an accident in Howard County, and car was overturned on fire. And he reached into the car at great risk to his life, and pulled out a young lady and saved her life from a burning car. I mean, that's
The feel-good story for the week.
Yeah. Corporal Craig Ream, way to go, buddy! And you really made Howard County and the Howard County Police Department proud this week. So congratulations. Hope the community appreciates what our men in blue do that way.
Well, we're very privileged today to have Attorney General Doug Gansler join us, so I don't want to waste any more of his time because he's a very busy man. Formally welcome you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. So, call you Doug if that's okay. So, Doug
that's
is...
That works.
It works. That's good. Well, yeah, I like to show respect.
I've been called a lot worse, believe me.
Mr. Attorney General.
I'm sure of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so, yeah, I get that. I'm an attorney too, so I get where we can get called out there.
Right.
Anyhow, been in office since 07?
In this office, yeah, I was the state's attorney since 98.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were a state's attorney from Montgomery County?
Right, for 2 terms.
Okay.
And before that, assistant U.S. attorney.
So, I came across an interesting stat today. There has not been a Republican attorney general in the state of Maryland since 1954. And that was an appointment. And actually, the last elected attorney general that was a Republican was 1918.
I don't remember 1918
Isn't that
well.
unbelievable,
But I believe
though?
you. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, it's a one-party state. And
we're going to get to that because,
yeah.
And that's really my point. It's fascinating. I think two-party, you need some healthy debate. And I think we're obviously a very liberal state and we have a very democratic state, but I think having two sides is healthy, and I think we're maybe missing a little bit of that.
Yeah, and the Attorney General is an interesting position because it's not seen by most of the electorate as being a political job. You're sort of above or below, however you define it, politics. You're really apolitical. You're supposed to do the right thing for the right reasons, be able to articulate those reasons. So you'll see even today, like in Mississippi, the Attorney General is a Democrat. In Arkansas, the Attorney General is a Democrat. And these are very, very red states, but people are willing to and want to trust the legal system to the Democrat for whatever reason.
Right.
Well, yeah, I would argue that.
And actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's actually not an elected position in all states.
Right. There's 5 states where it's not. Okay. I always say that the Attorney General of Tennessee is always the most qualified one of us. This is a guy who went to Princeton undergrad, Harvard Law School, couldn't get elected in his own living room, but he is probably the most qualified and best of all of us. He's appointed by the Tennessee Supreme Court. And so he doesn't have to sort of knock on 9 doors or whatever, 7 doors, however many people it is. He's actually somebody that is meritorious.
Well, and not like Yale and UVA are all that bad.
No, but I played lacrosse. So, it diminishes my Yale piece.
Well, it's not like you've had a hard time with elections. I mean, you're a Democrat, so you really don't have to worry about the general election.
Well, right, because I'm a moderate, pro-business, centrist Democrat. So
but you don't have to worry about a primary.
Right. But when I ran for state's attorney in Montgomery County in 98, I was running against 30 years of incumbency, was able to I had a platform that ran on community prosecution, knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. And then when my second term as state's attorney, I was actually endorsed by both parties, both the Republican and the Democratic Party. I then ran for Attorney General, and nobody had won from my part of the state forever, and was able to be successful in that endeavor.
You're talking about Montgomery County.
In Montgomery County. No one had run and won statewide for any job since 1919.
Wow.
And I won that, but then in the re-elect in 2010.
Why do you think that is? Is it because anti-Montgomery County bias?
I think there's an anti-Montgomery County bias. I think they think of Montgomery County as being what Howard County is today.
And what would that be?
Envious of great public schools, envious of the median income.
I know. We're the spoiled child.
Nicely done.
Right, and I think that's exactly what it was, and also literally where it's situated. They think of Montgomery County being sort of a suburb of D.C., and with the focus on D.C., which there are parts of Montgomery County that actually do fit that bill, but now the growth in Montgomery County has all been into the north, and it's a very Maryland, seen as a Maryland place. So when I ran for re-election for for Attorney General in 2010, no one ran against me in either the primary or the general election, which was quite interesting because I'd been the leader and have been the leader for years and years on the marriage equality issue, and they tried to impeach me in Annapolis, some of the right-wing guys.
I know.
Of course, my wife was hoping they'd be successful, so I get that real job.
Stay at home a little bit
Can
more.
you please go back to private practice?
Exactly, and actually make a paycheck. So, but no one did run against me, and so I think being in the center has been actually very helpful in terms of, to your point about the general elections.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that you've done and you're working on. I mean, for one, you say you're in the center, but you've been pretty upfront on gay marriage,
which is, I think, the ultimate Republican issue, right? Two people contracted to do whatever they want, leave the government out of their private lives.
Everybody should be miserable like the rest of us.
Well, that's one of the arguments. Yeah.
Well, and two dads and two moms can be just as good a parent as a mom and a dad. And a lot of times you have broken homes, and that structure doesn't always work.
Right, and the studies show that there's actually no difference for the kids because you're born gay. You're either gay or not gay. It's not like you wake up one day and say, "Hey, I think I'll be gay today." So
well, look, and I've got a lot of gay friends, and you can talk to them, and they don't elect this lifestyle.
Right,
I mean, it's innate in who they are.
And that's right. And previous to this, we were literally denying people the right to the pursuit of happiness, in which would be violative of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. And every court that's looked at it in recent years has so found, and now the Supreme Court's going to take a look at it, and I'm optimistic there as well.
Of course, yeah, that comes back to states' rights versus federal rights or federal law, because you were also one of the first people to say that if a couple was, before Maryland had gay marriage, if a couple was married in Massachusetts, then Maryland was compelled to recognize that marriage.
Right. Even at that time, when Maryland's statute said that marriage was going to be between a man and a woman, there were 6 states that allowed same-sex couples to get married: Iowa, Vermont, Massachusetts, and so forth. And the issue there was actually, what is Maryland going to do? Are we going to recognize that valid contract, or are we not? And the issue was less on of gay marriage and more on the full faith and credit clause of the United States Constitution. It's like if you chose to drive to Maine tomorrow, you wouldn't have to stop at every state along the way and get a new driver's license.
Right.
They recognize that license as we do in the marriage context.
What do you think is going to need to happen for federal rights to convey to gay marriages? I mean, so states are now saying, yeah, you can do it. We recognize it. We'll recognize other states. But there's some federal laws that they're not the beneficiaries.
Well, it's called DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, and so the courts have overturned that in a number of states, New York, California, and others, and the Supreme Court is now going to take that case up this term. So the federal government will get they'll follow what the Supreme Court says. We are going to be involved in that.
You'll be filing an amicus brief?
Yes, we'll be filing the amicus brief. We are the lead amicus on the Affordable Care Act, the constitutionality of that. We will not be the lead amicus here because New York will be, because the case occurred in New York, but we're helping them with the drafting of their brief.
Very nice.
Another hot topic, you've been pretty upfront on the gun control. That could be construed as a left issue.
I suppose, I'm much more on I think where 80 to 90% of the listeners of this podcast are on
both
guns.
Of them?
Yeah, both of them. But you two guys, because you're here and so you have to listen. But look, here's the thing. I think most people believe that if you want to have a handgun in your home to protect your house from some knucklehead that's going to come in and violate your family, that you ought to be able to have that. And if you're a hunter, you ought to be able to have your rifles. Those same most people believe that you shouldn't be able to walk down the middle of the street loaded up with AK-47s or Bushmasters. And so this is an issue that has become very polarizing in America, yet I don't understand why that is. It doesn't have to be a slippery slope where they say, well, yes, there is no legitimate reason why any citizen needs an assault weapon. Everyone agrees with that for the most part. But people are like, well, but that's a slippery slope. Now you're going to take away all our guns. No,
but Doug,
you just don't need a bazooka.
The majority of people that are murdered in this country are not murdered with those weapons.
That's true.
They're murdered with the gun that I have in my house that gets stolen.
Right.
Or, that's what's happening. And it seems to me that gun control has taken on such a life of its own, again, because of what happened, unfortunately, right before the holidays in Connecticut. But it seems to be such a political issue, and it seems to be something that politicians love to run with. We already have tons of laws on the books for gun control. They're not working. That's not the problem. The problem is mental illness. The problem is they're not getting enforced. I don't know that outlawing bazookas or automatic weapons is going to change the death rate for murders in this country.
It will change the death rate because some murders are, the Connecticut being an example, are used assault weapons. But to your point, yes, most of the the murders that happen in the inner cities and other areas are done by handguns, illegal handguns. Called crime guns.
Right.
And they're bought at gun shows, they're bought in from other states that have lax laws, they're bought by straw purchasers, and we need to be able to control that. So when people say, well, let's go after the mental health problem. The mental health problem in this country is huge.
It's huge.
The challenge is taking somebody with a mental health history and being able to foreshadow or forecast that person will now take a gun and start shooting up a school.
Right. But don't you think part of it is the mental health is harder to get your hands around because it gets into privacy issues? I mean, it's almost easier to go after the guns than the real problem.
I would argue the real problem would be something we ought to be looking at as well. In other words, law enforcement can't do its job without information. And one of the problems we have is when somebody goes to the Maryland State Police and wants to get a gun, either a permit for at home or a carry, we may not be able to get, the state police may not be able to get to their mental health history, certainly in Maryland, but in other states for sure. Or the domestic violence background, or even their criminal history necessarily. And so that's the kind of thing, if you're going to sort of pick and choose who should carry a gun and who shouldn't, I would suggest that responsible people should be able to have a gun. But people that have mental health history problems, domestic violence history problems, or felonies, they shouldn't be able to get guns.
And you shouldn't be able to buy a gun at a gun show without having to go through a background check. I totally agree with that.
And Maryland has actually closed that, so we're good on that piece. The problem is you can go to Virginia and buy yourself a gun and bring it right on in, and that's what happens.
The border.
But you're right. I mean, look, we got to do the enforcement piece, and we've got to look at how do we keep guns in the hands of responsible people and out of those that are not responsible, and what do we do about school safety? And so those are the big issues I think that we're looking at. There are some issues that I don't think we need assault weapons on the streets.
I agree.
Other people can take the other side of that. And by the way, the Second Amendment has nothing to do with any of this, because when the Second Amendment was drafted, they were using muskets, so they weren't anticipating assault weapons.
Well,
there's a limit to it.
I was watching a program the other day, but they didn't specifically. It's called right to be armed, I believe.
Yeah.
But isn't the key word there a well-regulated militia?
Well, for 200 and some odd years, that was the key words, and then the Supreme Court, in a case called Heller, decided that no, the Second Amendment is no longer going to be a collective right; it's going to be an individual right. But interestingly, though, in that case, the Supreme Court said, now we're going to have it be an individual right, but we're going to limit it to 3 circumstances. You can only have under the Second Amendment a handgun, not an assault weapon. A handgun has to be in your home, and you can only use it for self-defense. So that's why this discussion about assault weapons and all that really is outside of both the framers of the Constitution and the Second Amendment, clearly, because there were no such thing as grenades or assault weapons, and outside of what the Supreme Court has held the Second Amendment means. And so we're trying to expand it, and here we're just trying to conform the Second Amendment and the Supreme Court and public safety, I think, in terms of gun responsibility.
Well, and I think it's a complicated issue, but I think the true resolution to the murders in inner cities is all about family values and creating better families, because you know what, those guys they're gonna get a hold of the handguns. The drug deals that are taking place, 90% of the murders that take place in inner cities have to either do with drugs or gangs or somebody that you know. They're not random shootings.
Yeah, it's a combination of factors, and family values as you describe it, is one thing, but also having a 2-parent household where people are home and having dinner together and all that is certainly a value. But also the education. If the schools are broken and people aren't educated, they're going to turn to other ways of making money, and there's a number of other sort of the availability of guns would be an issue, the drug trade, the lack of jobs in the cities. Those are all problems that create, there's no panacea to this deal.
It's a socioeconomic issue.
It's a socioeconomic issue, and I would argue not a racial issue. I think it is a socioeconomic issue.
More on that. I mean, another hot topic in Annapolis this year is the death penalty, repealing the death penalty in Maryland. I'm not sure where you are on that.
Well, I'm not going to be testifying on it, but I believe there are certain criminals who commit certain crimes that should have forfeited the right to live on our planet.
You think it's a deterrent?
Well, I don't think it serves as a deterrent the way it's worked today. If they said to you, by the way, if you go over 55 miles an hour on Route 95, we will pull you over and put a bullet in the side of your head. You won't go over 45. So can the death penalty be a deterrent? Absolutely. Is the way in which it's administered in Maryland a deterrent? Absolutely not.
And why is that?
Well, because because they let right now there's basically a moratorium on it because the governor has made it that way. But there's it can go decades and decades and decades before somebody who commits the crime is actually executed.
When was the last time we executed somebody?
Well, we've had 5 people executed since 1978 when it was reinstated. It's been since Governor Ehrlich was governor that the last person was executed.
So 2 years ago, Mike Miller, Senate President Mike Miller, was interviewed, and he said that he feels strongly that the Hitlers, the Eichmanns, the slavers, these mass murderers, they deserve the ultimate penalty.
Or the kid up in Connecticut who just shot everybody, or Timothy McVeigh, or
exactly.
Osama bin Laden.
Somebody like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yet now he seems to be pushing through and is going to allow a vote to repeal the death penalty without it passing committee. Talk to me about the legality of that process.
Well, I think he's being fair. I mean, what he's saying is, look, I have a view that I'm in favor of the death penalty because there are certain people that should have, deserve to get the death penalty for what they've done, assuming we have the right person, we have him on, we know that the person, we have reliable scientific evidence. And what he's saying is, my views notwithstanding, let's let the representatives in the state Senate and the House of Delegates make the vote. And the reality is, I think he said out loud and publicly, is regardless of that vote, it'll probably go to referendum anyway. And so the people of Maryland will have the opportunity to vote on the death penalty. So
can the president of the Senate bring something to the full floor of the Senate, even though it's supposed to go through a particular committee first?
I think what he's saying is that he will encourage the committee to get it out of committee and then bring it to the floor.
Yeah, to twist some arms, which he's very good at doing.
Yes, he is.
Well, look, to his credit, I think it's the fair and right thing to do.
Right.
He's been in the Senate since, 71, 2, something like that? Yeah. He's been there a long time, so he's earned his stripes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure, marriage equality was his top issue either, but he let that out, and the DREAM Act and all these different things. So it's letting the people, it's democracy, and he's letting people, the broader elected group in Annapolis have the first vote, and some of these issues now do go to referendum. Maybe less so in the future since they all failed this time, but there's certainly that recourse available.
So you have got to have a reputation of being a fairly progressive guy, I think. Talk to me about your thoughts on marijuana. I know last year we passed some legislation that somewhat legalized its use. Do you think that's just the beginning of where this is ultimately heading?
I think the country is moving toward medical marijuana as sort of philosophically, people don't have a problem with that if a doctor prescribes it and has legitimate uses. The problem with the way it's been put in other states is it hasn't been confined to that. So you go to Colorado, every street corner's got a marijuana shop. Most people that need medical marijuana, for example, have arthritic conditions. In Colorado, something like 90% of the prescriptions are written for people under 26.
So arthritis.
But
so it's been misused.
But even in California, where they had it was medical marijuana. I mean, it was easy to get a doctor's script for.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Colorado, the same thing. California, same thing.
So Washington and Colorado went ahead and said, "To heck with it."
Yeah, and it's been interesting. In Maryland, it is a progressive state. I mean, I don't know. It depends on how you define progressive. I'm a pro-business, moderate, centrist Democrat.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah,
is that your elevator speech?
Yeah, but I think I try to stay out of elevators. If they break, you're in trouble. You got to make sure you like the person you're in there with.
Yeah,
but on some of the social issues, I think I am more progressive. But the marijuana issue really hasn't. Interestingly, in Maryland, hasn't gotten a lot of traction. It hasn't sort of got up to the brink of passage yet. I don't know why that is, or really have.
Yeah, it seems all the action's on the West Coast.
Yeah, it is, and maybe it's sort of this kind of freer thinking people or West Coast. I don't know. It's a naturally grown substance, and we're in the West Coast, so let's have it. Or I don't know.
Would you support further liberalization of its use?
I'd have to look at what they're doing. I mean, I'm real concerned with the way in which it's been implemented in all the states. I mean, if it were strictly medical marijuana by real doctors for real reasons, I don't think anybody has a problem with that. It's the way in which it sort of comes in. Is this sort of backdoor to, having 16-year-old kids smoking marijuana and then driving down the street? I think people have a problem with it.
The pharmaceutical reps that come to the doctor's offices and bring samples.
Yeah.
You
want some samples behind.
You want to hold the door open for them, huh?
Well,
come right in.
While we're on the healthcare, you recently had a big case against Medicaid fraud in Maryland.
Yeah, we do the Medicaid fraud cases, and we bring millions of dollars back to the state on the Medicaid fraud. We also go after pharmaceutical companies that do off-label marketing. We brought millions of dollars back to consumers on that. So we're, that's what we have. Most people don't know what our 467 lawyers do every day, and it's an amazing. We represent so many different components of state government and bring back millions and actually billions of dollars to the people of Maryland. One of the things I'm spending the most time on.
So you cover your office costs.
We do, but most of it goes to the general fund, and so
You're getting credit for it.
We're very understaffed. No, we're not there for the credit. The people that are in our office are woefully underpaid and can be making a lot more money elsewhere. But they do
Alan
it.
was telling us that.
Yeah, they do it to wear the white hat. I'll tell you, you don't have a hard problem. If you work at the Attorney General's office in Maryland, you don't have a hard time sleeping at night. You're going after bad banks and bad insurance companies and people who are doing bad things to consumers. So it's a great job.
And that's a never-ending battle. I mean, there's always somebody trying to game the system.
Well, in particular when times are tough. You know, the scammers come out, and the thing I'm spending a lot of time on right now. Well, two things. One, I'm the president of all the 50 AGs, so I'm the head of the national organization.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's actually been an interesting year.
Thankless job, I'm sure.
Well, it's good. You get to sort of pick your priorities. So what you're doing is privacy in the digital age and some of these issues about going on the internet and what companies are doing with your information, to whom are they selling, and are they protecting, and all that. But the other thing we're doing is, in terms of the money and priorities, is we've recovered almost $1 billion for people just in Maryland from the big banks on the foreclosure crisis, and getting them their money back. And so the Medicaid fraud, all these different areas are kind of all lumped together and trying to help consumers against the big guy.
On the bank thing, you got some criticism you didn't get enough. Of course, I guess that's always the case.
I've actually never heard anyone criticize that. That would be a tough argument to make. We actually got the 6th most money in the country. We got more money back in Maryland than New York.
But the banks get relieved of further liability.
Only for origination claims and servicing claims, not securitization or criminal liability or anything of the sort. And all the origination claims, the people that are originating these claims are all gone, and the statute of limitations had run. And on the servicing claims, that's where the $26 billion represents. We also had 42 pages of new standards that will be hit in the future, so the big banks can't do this to citizens again. I hadn't actually heard that we hadn't gotten enough. I've sort of heard the other way.
Well, Dennis is the only person that feels that way. So.
That's a whole lot of money. That's just to people in Maryland. We've already gotten $550 million out to keep people in their homes, and what it does is it keeps them in their homes, but it also protects the values of the homes around them and helps reverse the economic situation.
Now, has that money hit the street already? Is that people?
Yeah, like I said, about $550 million's already hit the streets. And I go to African American churches on Sundays and other places, and people come up and give me a hug. Perfect strangers give me hugs and say thanks for keeping me and my children in their homes, and it's the right thing to do. And we kind of move forward, and really the foreclosure crisis.
Did y'all no hugs during flu season? Or?
I got the shot, so I'm a little afraid of that.
With your job, with your job, you have to.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a big baby kisser, but you never know.
So wind farms seem to be getting some traction again this year, and Governor O'Malley seems to think that this is the year.
Yeah, he's going to push that through again. He's tried it a few years before, and it's a lot of the environmental community's for it. The people talk about the expense, and we'll see how it survives. The thing I've been focused on for about 3.5 years in terms of alternative energy is converting chicken manure into energy. So I've been talking about that for about 3 or 4 years now. We have 1.2 billion pounds of chicken manure. It's our biggest organic source of pollution in the bay.
That we use ashore.
Right, but we have an ability to convert 500 million pounds into 55 megawatts of power, which will protect the poultry industry here in Maryland, protect the bay, help the environment, and sort of it's a win-win-win for everybody. And we think we're on the cusp of actually getting the first 10 megawatts into Maryland.
Does that type of energy generation require subsidies as well, like the windmill?
Well, in the sense that I put it, one of my legislative priorities was to get chicken litter to energy to be what's called a Tier 1 source. So the law in Maryland is that utilities have to buy 10% of their power from Tier 1 sources, ultimately 20%. Right. Wind power is one of them, biothermal power, solar power, and chicken litter to energy was the 9th one. And so to the extent that you consider that a subsidy or not, one could argue yes, but regardless, the law says they have to buy it from one of these sources, and chicken litter to energy is going to be one of these sources in the future.
Not to be confused with Tier 1 designated land. Right, whole different Tier 1, right?
The growth.
It's always good to be Tier 1, I suppose.
So, again, and I'm jumping on the political angle of it. So windmills seem to be, again, that sexy thing right now. Everyone thinks that's the cool way to generate energy. It sounds like your idea, we already have the poop, so why don't we use it and put it to good use?
Yeah, it's a problem already.
The poop problem, as you call it.
Dennis warned you. We're very casual, very laid back.
I appreciate it. Is in government, the problem is with these bureaucrats, they look at things sort of in silos, and they say, well, in the poop situation, you have the environmental silo and you have the energy silo. The great thing about the conversion of chicken manure into energy is it's probably the biggest thing. If we were able to hit our capacity of 55 megawatts, it would be the biggest thing we've done for the Bay in 50 years. And like I said, we're about to take that first step. So that's the environmental side. The energy side is you have now 55 megawatts of alternative power, so you have less reliance on oil and fuel and less reliance on coal. Wind is yet another avenue that people are looking at in terms of alternative power. There's two types of wind. There's on land and offshore. This is the offshore that they're looking at, and they just got to convince people that the economics of it makes sense.
Do you support the dollars and the expenditure of building that infrastructure offshore?
Well, I haven't really looked at it. I mean, I think that the concept is a good one. The dollars vis-a-vis what the return is, I haven't really looked at it. I've been really focused on the chicken litter.
You said it was a busy day. So.
Yeah.
Well, let's while we're on energy, I mean, we talk about all these alternative energy uses, but in Western Maryland, we have a piece of the Marcellus Shale.
Yeah.
But we are one of the only states in the region that don't allow the fracking.
Well, we're not. There's others that don't. Pennsylvania does. New York and it has a lot of the Marcellus Shale doesn't either. It's not that.
West Virginia does, correct?
Yeah.
On either side of us.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the Marcellus Shale is interesting. I mean, that ultimately we will be what's called fracking, hydraulic fracturing of the Marcellus Shale. The question is, and I think most people are in the same place on this, we got to make sure it's done safely. We got to make sure that the drinking water is not compromised. I mean, compromised like you can't drink it.
Right.
Compromised.
Right. Well, like flames coming out of your spigot.
Yeah, you prefer not to have that, but you'd also want this cheap, pollution-free natural gas that's there, and it's a wonderful thing. We've been relying on natural gas.
It's great for the Western Maryland economy.
Yeah, well, sort of. I mean, that's more. That's a harder issue because the leasing of the land is one thing, so that would help some of the people that actually have the shale under their properties, but it'll be mostly sort of utilities coming from other places that'll then take the natural gas and sell it somewhere else. So how much will it actually affect?
But creating jobs in the process.
It'll create some jobs. I think the bigger issue is getting us away from the dependency on coal and oil and having this natural gas there and being able to get it in Western Maryland would be a great thing. They've been doing fracking in the Midwest and other places, but it's been vertical. This is horizontal, which hasn't been tested. We actually had to sue a company called Chesapeake Energy that was doing this in Pennsylvania, where two of the wells blew up, and benzene and all kinds of other nasty stuff did get into the water. So all we're trying to do from our perspective is say, look, let's do this, but let's make sure it's safe. And once we're at that point, then it's obviously a great thing to do in the future.
But Doug, they are doing it all around the country, and there are some parts of the Midwest, I think in North Dakota, where they are doing horizontal fracking, if I'm not mistaken. And we have some of the smartest scientists in the world in this area. We've got great universities, great scientists. Why is it that we can't get out of our own way to get this going?
I think they'll get it going. I think right now, if you were to talk candidly with anybody in the industry, they will tell you they're not sure it's safe at this point.
Okay.
And that's why, for example,
that's a legitimate issue.
And that's why those wells blew up. But I do think, this world is, millions of years old. We're at a tipping point right now in terms of hydraulic fracturing that I do think it's going to come to Maryland, and it'll come to Maryland relatively soon, but it'll have to be in a safe way. And I think people all are in agreement that that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be a situation where we can't drink the water at the cost of sending natural gas
have energy,
overseas.
But we can't drink. Right.
We're going to send this stuff overseas, but we can't drink our own water.
So shifting gears, hot off the press, ACC, University of Maryland. You guys, obviously, University of Maryland has pulled out of the ACC and is joining the Big Ten Conference. And
kind of hard to visualize, huh?
It's exciting.
The University of Maryland going out to play Nebraska in football. Yeah.
Call me as one of the. I'm not happy.
You're old school.
It doesn't feel right. It doesn't.
I'm just sad about not being able to kick Duke's butt.
Right.
Right. Old rivalries.
No, look, the conferences were set up to be geographically, and that's the thing. But now there's
money.
There's big money out there, and there's a lot of money. And the money that will be gained from this, the policymakers. This was not. We had nothing to do with this, but they felt that the amount of money coming in will be able to get all their sports back. They'll help financial aid. They'll help student academics. Our role is to we're the lawyers for the university. We don't make the policy. We're the lawyers.
Right.
So the ACC is trying to extract $53 million as something what they're calling an exit fee.
But wasn't that contractual? I mean, wasn't that?
Well, it's in some sense. Maryland voted against it, but it's part of. It was an agreement that was reached by the people.
But in the
it was the basis upon which we were a part of that conference.
Right.
No, Maryland was one of the original universities that started the conference. There was no such thing as this, exorbitant exit fee at the time. So the question is it punitive? See, the exit fee by law is not allowed to be punitive. It has to be actual compensatory damages. So the largest exit fee in the history of our country was when West Virginia left the Big East, and that was $12 million. And then it was even exponentially higher than ever before because they wanted to leave that year. year. Maryland doesn't have that problem.
Right.
Generally, it's $2 or $3 or $4 million is the exit fee. They're trying to extort $53 million from Maryland, and since then they put Louisville into the conference. Syracuse is going to enter the conference. So for them to show that they actually are losing $53 million from Maryland's exit, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to show, particularly in the wake of all the other precedent in the country. So I think we're on pretty sound footing. What we did today is we filed a suit in Maryland regarding the antitrust claims, that they're trying to put this artificial hurdle over universities being able to pick what conference they feel, rightly or wrongly, that they feel is in their best interest. And secondly, to get the case removed from North Carolina to Maryland, because the ACC doesn't have the jurisdiction to bring a sovereign state, in this case Maryland, into its state for litigation.
So is that suing a state much like suing any other defendant, where you need to sue them basically in their place of business, or?
Yes and no. I mean, the difference is you can sue another business in another state if you can show there's a nexus. Like,
right.
If in this
contract
case,
signed there,
right?
Or if there's business being.
But they can't sue a state in another state, and so Maryland doesn't have to go to another state. It's a sovereign state. They don't have to abide by North Carolina's, laws in this case. And so they filed. The ACC filed this case in local court in Greensboro, North Carolina. We're going to move
You think
to
they get a favorable jury down there?
they think they might.
Now, do you see it ending up in federal court?
Unlikely. It's unlikely that there's a federal claim associated with this. That's probably going to stay in local court. We filed it in Prince George's County because that's where the flagship of the University of Maryland.
This will be settled.
Most cases are settled, and it should be settled. Yeah. I mean, look, there's no animosity by the University of Maryland or any of its fans regarding the ACC. The ACC has been great. It's a great conference. It still exists, and we support it. Many people were torn about during the ACC Big Ten Challenge who to root for this year.
Right.
So there's no animosity with the ACC. The question is, can they try and literally extort $53 million from the University of Maryland? And our argument is no, they can't. Not under the law.
We're kind of getting to the end here, but we'd be remiss if we did not mention the governor's race.
You running?
He's thinking about it.
I'm thinking about it.
They could use a man like you.
He's a self-anointed big deal.
Yes.
I don't want to spend that kind of time down in Annapolis. You're one of the mentioned front runners for the office. We have an opening in 2014. Obviously, O'Malley can't run again. And you campaign finance reports just came out, and you were the big money winner.
Yeah, I didn't do anything. Every year I have one event a year up in Baltimore, one event in Montgomery County.
But you don't have
to. We did the same thing.
You don't have any campaign. Nobody runs against you. You just.
Isn't that nice?
It must be.
My mother thinks it's because I'm doing a good job, but I don't know about that.
Well, where I'm going with this.
You let her keep believing that, right?
So you've raised all this money. You've got the largest war chest of any of the top tier candidates. And I say top tier. You've got the Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown and our own Ken Ullman, county executive. But you had the least expenses of everybody.
Yeah, I'm what's called a fiscal conservative.
By almost half.
Right. Well, I'm not running a campaign, so I don't have a campaign. So the other people that, not to give specific names, but different people.
We can do the names.
Whatever you want to do. had multiple events over time. They were sending out emails for money. They had all this, little campaign staffers. I'm not in a campaign. I'm the Attorney General of Maryland, so I just do my job. I have my one event. We send out the invitations. They have 12, 15 volunteers that come and work at the event, and that's my operation now.
So you have no campaign staff.
So
no, well, I didn't, and I will in the future. There's an election next year. I'm going to run for office, so I will have a campaign staff as we get closer to actually running a campaign.
Which office?
Well, we're going to see about that. I'm not term limited out, but I'm obviously looking at the governor's office. I think it's many attorneys general run, and they seem to do quite well. If you look at north of us in Pennsylvania, the governor was the attorney general. South in Virginia,
lieutenant governors don't do very good in Maryland.
They've never won in Maryland, or rarely do they win elsewhere. But we have a very good lieutenant governor, and he's doing a good job, and we'll see what what he'll do in the future as well.
So
no one's announced for governor, as far as I know.
How come? I mean,
because
it's just a silly game. I mean, we all know who the.
Yeah, but to the politician's defense, and I rarely do defend politicians. The press is the one that wants the job. Look, there was just an election a couple months ago for the president of the United States, a number of other issues, including marriage equality and DREAM Act, and everyone's like, well, let's get to the next election. The next election's in November of 2014.
But there's so much posturing about when to announce and who's going to announce first, and
but that's all done by the press.
No. Not in
the
defense.
posturing piece.
Well, but we're invited to events of where the candidates or the supposed candidates.
I never invited you to my event. It's nothing personal.
I know. I'm not saying you.
You're always welcome to come to anything I have.
Hey, he raised 1.2 at 2 events. He doesn't need you at his event.
Apparently not. And you know what? I'm happy not to pay for another
exactly.
event. But I've gone to some of these events with some of your other fellow politicians in the state, and there's the coy announcements of, gee, I'd like to continue serving the state, and they do everything but say I'm running.
Right, and some of the people term limit out, so they have to have a reason for having things.
I get that, but why not just come out and say, yeah, I want to run for governor?
I guess these guys have political consultants that tell them when they need to do it and when they should do it. I mean, for me, I have a great job. I love the job I'm doing. I'm president of all the attorneys general of the United States of America, so I'm busy.
Well, here we are, our state controller, Peter Francho. He loves his job too, and he said, you know what? I'm not running for governor. I'm going to run for controller again. But you're not. Are you saying that you're not going to run for governor? You're going to run for? I'm
not saying anything. I mean, I'm not. I'm just doing my job, and when people are interested in hearing about actually whether I'm going to run for governor or not, other than you two and my mother, as I mentioned, we'll make that announcement. Right now, I don't want to politicize.
You're just not there yet.
I'm not there yet. I like what I'm doing. We just had an election. I was very active on the DREAM Act stuff. I was very active in marriage equality. I ran President Obama's campaign in Maryland along with Elijah Cummings last time, and for me, I get to do pretty cool stuff. I mean, today we're talking about the ACC. That's a pretty interesting case, and I have a number of different. Every day is a new challenge and exciting. I'm bringing back millions of dollars for the people of Maryland, and so when it's time, the problem with saying I'm running for governor is all of a sudden then you go to the bathroom and people say you're just doing it because you're running for governor.
Right.
And I like going to the bathroom without people think I'm running for governor.
As you should.
Thanks for noticing.
So one question that's been the subject of a little bit of speculation, obviously our county executive, Ken Ullman, is interested in the governor's house as well. But he seems to be an underdog, and there are a lot of people that have said, you know what, no one from Howard County's ever won. How are you going to do that? What if you don't get it? Because Ken's not a lieutenant governor kind of guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ken's a great guy, and he's doing a great job.
So the question is, your seat, Attorney General. Is it true that you have to be a practicing attorney for 10 years?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's defined by being a member of the bar. So Ken obviously would qualify, as would.
Oh, just being a member of the bar.
Yeah. Because what practicing attorney means, most lawyers don't go to court every day. The test would be, how many minutes a day and where do you go and all that. Okay. And they've gone after people for that. Like Jerry Brown, was the Attorney General of California,
right,
and is now the Governor of California. He said, well, you're the mayor of Oakland. You're not practicing law. Well, of course he's practicing law. He's a member of the bar. He could do his mother's will or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So for Attorney General, you have to be a member of the Maryland bar for 10 years or more and live in Maryland for 10 years or more, and you can run. So if either one of you guys qualify, have at it. It's a great job.
Well,
I'm very happy just having you on as a guest.
Yeah. And
I like being here.
And as we close here, I just want to say, before you arrived today, we were kind of speculating with, would Doug be wearing purple?
Yeah. And Maryland's got 2 NFL teams, and one of them happens to be in the championship game, so we got to support that.
And this is a podcast that people don't see, but we want to acknowledge that you're wearing a beautiful purple tie, and you're in the spirit, even though Ken says he's the only true Ravens fan.
I work in Baltimore every day, so if I didn't wear a purple tie, I'd be in big trouble. Yeah.
Doug, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Best of luck to you, and thanks for all your work.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thanks.
So before we wrap up for the day, it was a big week today in Columbia Mall, and we've invited to kind of close out the show today Michelle Jose, who is the marketing manager.
I am, yes.
For the mall in Columbia.
It's nicely done. You got the name down. You got the title down.
I did it without any hesitation looking at notes. The sledgehammers were out in force.
They were
on Tuesday. Was it Tuesday?
Yes, it was Tuesday morning.
And what happened?
So we invited County Executive Ken Ullman, a number of the County Council members, to come out and celebrate our groundbreaking ceremony for our upcoming expansion. We had gold sledgehammers, like you said. We had a nice little wall to signify the breaking down of the back wall of our former J. Crew space, and everybody kind of went to town this morning.
Opening up the old main entrance.
Absolutely.
There was a time when that was the main entrance of the mall.
Exactly. So we're opening it back up. Hopefully it'll be ready by holiday of this year, so we're very excited.
Everybody wants to know who's coming. But you can't tell us.
Not yet. Very soon, though. Very, very soon.
So we'll have a restaurant.
We'll have a couple restaurants is the intention, and then a number of retailers as well.
Will they serve alcohol?
I would like to think so. I would imagine so. I
Do you
think it
hope
would be
so?
a miss not to. Absolutely, don't you?
my priority.
Martinis? No.
And when will shoppers be able to see the first stores open for business?
Sure. Well, if the time frame, if everything falls into place, we hope to have a couple stores inside the mall that will open as part of the expansion in about August, September.
Okay.
Maybe even July, depending. It depends on how quick their fit out is. As for the rest of the expansion, you'll start to see some work probably June once LL Bean comes down.
Right. That building is coming down. Gone.
It is coming down. So we are redeveloping that 30,000 square feet that the LL Bean building currently sits in, and then we're adding an additional 40,000 square feet.
Wow.
So very
Well,
exciting.
congratulations on being truly the first Sledgehammer. I mean, in all this revitalization that's been talked about for years and years and years, you're actually the first to actually get it
Yes.
going.
Clyde's my beater. If Clyde's
No.
No.
Well,
That's right, because they've
Clyde's-
actually swung us.
They swung a hammer.
That's right.
They had
Yep.
to be first.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
of course, you know what? You got their proverbial, groundbreakings and whatever. You guys kind of did take this one to a new level of, putting up a, kind of a wall and gold
We
hammers
did.
and whatever. But nicely done nonetheless.
That's very
Thank
good.
you. I
Congratulations.
appreciate
And one more thing. So you've been through the 18 steps of the town center redevelopment.
We have. It took us about a year, but a little over a year.
And you were the guinea pig.
We were the guinea pigs, yes. But we
Well,
made it through.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And we look
There's
forward
like a
to
bottle of DP standing there waiting at the end. You did it.
And when that new restaurant opens with a bar, I'll buy you a drink.
Thank you. I'll
Hey.
hold you to it.
Thanks for coming by and thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
That about wraps up yet another episode, and then there's that. Together with my co-host Paul Scownley, we'd like to thank our producer Dave Bittner, who makes us look good on the internet. We'd also like to thank General Growth Properties and the Mall in Columbia for hosting our show again today. We'll be back again on February 1st with special guest Nikki Highsmith, the president and CEO of the Horizon Foundation, and our usual blend of hyper-local news and commentary. We hope you join us.